We are live, and Ingrid Heckel is joining the meeting now.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and get started this evening. This is the Tuesday, August 9th, 2022 meeting of the Village of New Paltz Environmental Policy Board. We do have quorum this evening with 3 members present. We'll go ahead and start the call the meeting to order. If there are any questions for the Environmental Policy Board, you're encouraged to use the email address environment@villagenewpaltz.org. That's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for any kind of questions for us. We do give an opportunity for the public to comment, and we'll hear, well, we do, and soon we'll be in person also, or hybrid, or both, and it'll be more available for that. But if anyone wants to make comments or submit written comments, they can use that same email. The agenda is up, but we do have a guest. So what I want to propose is that when we get to section 5 for the village update, or village planning board update, at that time, we could allow Ingrid to speak to us about wetlands in the village. That'd be all right. All right, so I'm going to make that change in the agenda, and at the same time start to move through the other items. Okay, so there's no public hearings this evening, and we don't have any, well, administrative actions. We have the agenda as shown above, shown on the screen. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening, please.
Second that.
Moved by myself, seconded by Jonathan. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. All right, and it passes. We don't have any minutes for this evening and no claims. Any announcements? General announcements for all of us this evening. Autumn, do you have any village type announcements?
Village type announcements. The village board will be meeting tomorrow night in the fire department meeting rooms at Village Hall, starting at 7 o'clock. Tonight's zoning board of appeals meeting is being held at LT Memorial Library at 7 o'clock. Paint swap goes on the second Tuesday of every month. That falls today, so that it might be relevant if people have products that they want to submit to the paint swap. Wendy Toman also has instituted a TerraCycle program that allows you to bring other kinds of recyclables that you wouldn't otherwise submit with your regular recycling, like magic markers and school supplies and deodorant containers and things like that. There's information on the village website about that as well, if anybody has any questions.
All right. And then if you don't mind, in that same category at the village hall is the food pantry. Is that, I don't know if there's any official hours or anything for those.
The free food fridge at Village Hall operates from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. The organization that's running it is called Millions of Butterflies, and you can go to millionsofbutterflies.org if you want to know what you can submit, like what the rules are for submitting, what kind of things they are looking for in the refrigerator. It's open, the refrigerator is open to everybody, whoever needs it, whenever they need it. And we of course encourage people to use the trash receptacles nearby and not leave their garbage on the Village Hall property. We really, really appreciate that.
All right, that's great. Any other announcements? All right, that brings us to item 5, which is the wetlands discussion presentation. I won't go into it any further, but Ingrid asked to be here this evening. Ingrid, I don't know if the others here know you, so if you could introduce yourself a little bit and then tell us why you wanted to speak this evening.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ingrid Heckel. I live in the town on Plutarch Road, and I served on the conservation board for 5.5 years. I'm currently on the Community Preservation Fund Advisory Board for the town. This actually came about because of a suggestion by a town planning board member who might be joining tonight. I sent her the link somewhat late, so I don't know if she got it, but her name is Jane Schonberg. She happens to live in the village, and in following the Woodland Pond expansion project and how that's gone through the planning board, she was very surprised that the village does not have a wetland and watercourse protection law similar to the town's law. And she asked if she could meet with me. I'm very familiar with the town wetland law from my time on the conservation board, and I also do education programs through the DEC about similar types of laws. Anyway, so she said, why, we should go to the village board and bring this up. The village should establish a law to kind of bring conformity to the way that the town and the village are treating wetlands and streams in the local code. And so we had a little discussion about it, and I suggested we talk with you guys first and bring this up and discuss what a possible approach forward would be to raising this with the village board. But as a first step, I did a little bit of draft mapping showing what it would look like if the village applied the similar kind of regulatory buffers that exist in the town to wetlands and streams. And I sent Ted that map, which I believe he shared with you. Ted, do you want to share that map? Put it up on your screen.
Do you have it up?
I've got it here.
I realize I'm on a different computer here than the one that I created that map on, but I can pull it up quickly.
I'm doing the same. I'll see if I can't get to it too.
If I can, do I have sharing privileges? Yeah, I do. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, so the town wetland and watercourse protection law includes 100-foot buffers around wetlands that are 1 acre or larger, and 50-foot buffers around wetlands that are between 1/10 of an acre and 1 acre. There's also 100-foot buffers along perennial streams and 50-foot buffers along intermittent streams that flow for at least 3 months out of the year. And in addition, I think for vernal pools, there's a 100-foot buffer if those pools meet a certain biological value threshold. So it's a great law, and it's worked really effectively in what I've observed, at least in the town, in terms of guiding development away from wetland buffer areas. The planning board takes it very seriously. And so the sort of thing that's happening right now at Woodland Pond, where they're building some new cottages, the village does not have that type of law. The federal wetland protections do not include any buffer provision. So, they can build right up to the edge of a wetland, a federal wetland, without a problem. So this is a map. The village is really fortunate that back in 2006, there was a study done by Hudsonia, which is a small environmental research center that did a in-depth mapping of wetlands and streams in the village. So unlike the town, the village actually has a very comprehensive map of where all of your wetlands and streams exist. And so those are shown on the map here. The ones that have kind of a greenish turquoise background are the ones that were mapped by Hudsonia. The other areas that are whitish here with the wetland symbol are mapped by in the National Wetland Inventory. And I just added those buffer distances based on the size of the wetlands along these features to, show roughly what it would look like to add this additional protection. Now, a lot of the wetlands in the village are either, already protected in the Millbrook Preserve here, or they're on the SUNY campus down here. I do want to say, there was one project that happened, SUNY is not subject to the village laws. However, there was an incident, this was several years ago, like 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, where they were expanding student parking on this big lot. This is that main parking lot off of Route 32 for SUNY New Paltz. And they purchased this property here. Can you see my cursor? And so they were expanding the parking lot here. Well, there's actually an intermittent stream that flows right kind of along this property boundary there from this wetland down here, and it connects to the stream that goes through SUNY New Paltz. That's the Mill Creek. And SUNY cut down all the vegetation down to the edge of the stream. They really messed up this area. And not realizing perhaps that this was in the town, and the town does have these regulations about protecting stream buffers. And they said, oh, well, we thought we were in the village. And, we generally try to adhere to the village regulations, even though we're not technically required to. Anyway, they tried to make excuses for it, and they did end up adjusting their design. At our request, they removed several parking spots, and they did restore they planted some vegetation back in there. But that's just one example of they went ahead and started clearing all the riparian vegetation because they figured it wouldn't be an issue in the village of New Paltz. But in terms of actual wetland area outside of the Millbrook Preserve and the SUNY campus, most of it is along the rail trail here. So it affects a relatively small number of properties in the village, and it's not, those wetland areas and streams are primarily not in the urban core of the village. In terms of the impact to property owners and development potential, I would think this regulation, wouldn't have a major impact. We could look at it more closely having these data. I have to download or find the zoning data for the village to see where these areas overlap. But I thought it was a great idea from Jane Schonberg to try to propose bringing this law from the town to the village. We don't know the history of why the village backed out of adopting that law originally. The town wetland watercourse law was controversial. It was initially struck down in court. It was revised, passed again. It was struck down again. It was later upheld by the state appeals court. So it's been tested now and upheld. And like I said, it's been very effective at reducing or avoiding development in those sensitive areas. So I'm not sure what you all think about this proposal and what would be the best pathway forward to bringing this to the village board. Or if you have any questions about this map or about the law and how it works.
This is all really helpful to know.
If Jane, I don't think Jane was able to join us. Sorry, I cut you off.
So Ingrid, just to say it again, just because I wasn't at the beginning of it, it was unclear. So what's shown in the village areas right now, the wetland and stream buffers, that blue, the light blue color, that's been added by you with the software program showing what additional protected areas would occur. It'd be so the difference would be the blue shaded areas. Is that right?
Yeah, so it would be the blue shaded areas. I mean, for the most part, these wetlands in the village probably have some federal protection because they're almost all connected to streams. Now there's a few, I think there are some, like this wetland over here where I'm raising my cursor, I think this is the vernal pool that a lot of people go to monitor amphibian crossings in the spring. So that's an example of a wetland that's not protected. These may be as well, I'm not sure offhand. This wetland, like I don't know if the federal government only regulates disturbance to wetlands that are connected to streams, essentially. And even then, they allow a certain amount of disturbance. There's nationwide permits that grant a certain level of disturbance to those areas. DEC, I would have to go back and look at which wetlands have been mapped, are currently on the jurisdictional map for DEC. I think they're probably limited to this Oxbow wetland down here. That's along Huguenot Street. DEC regulates wetlands that are 12.4 acres and larger, unless they have an unusual importance, local importance designation. That's sort of about to change at the state level over the next couple of years because the legislature just passed really great legislation that is going to make the maps no longer be jurisdictional. So that means that any wetland that's 12.4 acres will be protected under the state wetland law. And starting in 2028, it's going to go down to 7.4 acres and larger. That still leaves out a lot of small wetlands that are under that size threshold. So DEC regulates a 100-foot adjacent area around the state wetlands. The federal regulations do not include a buffer area. And neither the federal nor state regulations regulate buffer areas along streams. The village does have some sort of stream setback regulation of 20 feet, I believe. I think it's a setback and not like protection of vegetation, directly. So, and I tried to find exactly where that is in the village code and haven't. So if any of you know, I'd like to know that. Yeah, so basically, if the village were to adopt this law, it would add more protection to these federal wetlands, and it would protect these additional blue buffer areas along the wetlands and streams. And I did a quick calculation. I have that. Yeah, so Hudsonia mapped 111 acres of wetlands in the village. And if you add the regulatory buffers shown on this map, it comes to about 344 acres. So it triples the area that would be regulated essentially. And, Hudsonia maps more wetlands than show up on the DEC and the federal maps, but not a huge amount more. So yeah, are there other questions?
Let me just clarify, again, based on what you were saying. So the light blue area, but then also the turquoise Hudsonia wetland areas would be identified and protected under if we're recognized the town laws inside the village areas. Whereas right now, those areas are not necessarily.
Well,
right?
Most of the turquoise wetlands are in theory regulated by the federal government, by the Army Corps of Engineers, because they're connected to streams. There are a couple of exceptions, as I pointed out on the map, but most of the village's wetlands are adjacent to streams. I don't know, I'm not really closely familiar with how the Army Corps implements those regulations, but I would say that the town law would provide a lot more protection for those wetlands than you currently have under the federal regulations. And it's really important to protect wetland buffer areas for the quality of the wetland and for a lot of other reasons, for protecting the habitat and the water quality and avoiding pollution of the wetland.
Any other questions for Ingrid? So, Ingrid, you had contacted me last week. We talked a little bit about it. We agreed that we wanted to have you present this information, to the Environmental Policy Board. But do you have intended next steps, or do you have things that you need from us, or where do you think things go from here?
Well, Jane Schonberg wanted to bring this directly to the village board and ask them to look into it. And, I don't know, Alex, what you think would be the next step and how to present this and how the village would go about looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone would be interested in it, figuring out what next steps would be, I guess, like a draft law, so the more info that we can get, in front of us, the better. Like, I don't think there's going to be any problem, other than like the logistics of it, like what does this draft law look like?
Well, so there's the town law, and I think the question is how closely the village would want to adhere to what's in the town law. And I do have to say that the town law is quite voluminous. Like, it is a long, complex law, and I think, in some ways it's good. There were a lot of experts involved in drafting that law, and there were a lot of questions and concerns that were thrown at them that they tried to address. Hence, it kind of expanded and got more complicated. The downside to that is that I think it can be hard for people to absorb and understand the full extent of it.
And we tend to try to make things, we really like in the village to try to make laws that people can understand, so that I guess is like one potential block or barrier I see is, we wouldn't want, it is nice to be able to use examples that are out there, but we would want people to understand it. And so who will take on like that role of drafting the law? I know I'm still pretty tied up with a couple laws that are at a standstill trying to keep people housed. So it would have to be a big team effort.
Who do you think would need to be involved with that?
I mean, I don't really know. Like I could present something, but I can't draft it, I guess let me like look at the town one. I don't know how to even like make it make sense though, because I've read it in like in a more, I don't know, layman's terms realm.
Yeah.
I
want to look back at the town law again, and then we could also look at some examples from other villages. Like, I know the village of Ossining just adopted a wetland law.
Oh, I like other examples is always a good route to go.
I mean, I would encourage still kind of adhering to the general buffers that are in the town regulations for consistency there. But one other advantage I think that, like I said, that the village has is that the regulation could be based on the map. Like, we have this map, and part of what one reason that the town law was initially struck down was that it was based on a definition of a wetland and a stream, and
and not a map.
And people said that was vague, and that, how would people know if they had a regulated feature? But the town law includes this provision for the wetland inspector to go out to a property and provide a one-time free inspection to let property owners know if they have a regulated area. But having this map makes it much easier to say, this is where we know the wetlands are. And
Yeah. That is, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess looking back at it all, and then I'm gonna look at the village of Austenane. I just pulled it up. Their wetlands law. And I don't know, figuring out a way to like simplify the town version using the map. I think we could do it.
Mhm.
Anyone on the EPB want to help with this?
I mean, I'm happy to help work on it too. I wonder, yeah, it would be great if someone from the EPB were interested in.
Yeah, I would agree. I still owe Alex and Jonathan information on emissions or standby idling. So, and I do have that. I just need to get it over to you guys. But I will point out that I think one of the, and this is shameless promotion, whatever, but I think one of the more useful items that my daughter had in her college applications is she was involved in some rule writing at the local level. And so, you know, being involved in something like this looks great on either a job application or a college application.
Oh yeah, good point, Ted.
But
I also
you know,
have to say, I mean, just like I also don't want to walk into this naively, and that there will be lots of pushback. There's always pushback against these kinds of regulations. Fortunately, like I said, it would affect relatively few property owners in the village. And that would perhaps quell some of that pushback.
yeah, I agree. I think it is not as imposing as perhaps it was once feared to be. So we'll list it as a work group item. Give folks, members here the next couple of weeks to get involved. Ingrid, if you want to come back next time, or Alex, if you want our help or us to comment on it from the EPB's perspective to the Board of Town Trustees, we can do that too.
Yeah,
other
that'd be great to,
thoughts?
you know, kind of get some like EPB input on this or insight on this, and keep it as an agenda item, try and, you know, and figure out some next steps. Sorry, I'm like sick right now, so it's very hard for me to participate. But yeah, I think that sounds like a plan.
Should I follow up with you, Alex?
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you for everything.
Yeah, and if you want to keep it on the environment thread, that way we can all see it too. I think.
Okay.
If someone's able or interested, we can get involved.
Okay.
And I'd like to add, if you write to Alex, Ingrid, this is Autumn speaking, please copy me. I'll send you my email address and I can assist Alex.
Okay, great.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks for your time.
All right.
I'm going to hop off, but good to see you.
Good to see you too, Ingrid. Take care.
Okay. Bye. Oh, I need to stop sharing. All right. See you.
All right. So I will go back to share the agenda for this evening. You guys should all be able to see that now. It brings us to the next item, which is Village Planning Board update. This would normally be from Rachel. Autumn, I don't know if you care to add any updates or anything to these.
I can give you a quick summary of the planning board that might be relevant to the environmental policy board, since Ingrid just mentioned one of them.
Okay.
Woodland Pond was on the last planning board meeting, and 2 of the 3 cottages that they proposed were approved. at that meeting. There is a third cottage under consideration, but it will be resubmitted at a later date. And I bring it up because the question does revolve around the proximity to the wetlands area on the property. One other project that might be of particular interest to the EPB would be the proposed project 11 Water Street, which is where the box factory is now, for a hotel, a small boutique hotel. Forgive me, I forget how many rooms are intended for that, but they just had their first meeting at, I want to say the July 5th meeting was their first meeting. That will probably be in process for some time. There were a number of other applications, but they are escaping me in regards to how they might fit in with your agenda at the moment. Forgive me.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, concerns on the planning board aspects? All right. Next item is the report about the town's environmental conservation board efforts. I was out of town the last meeting, and I think the meeting we have coming up is in person. So I think we'll all be getting together soon. It's been a while since we've gotten together, so it'll be good for us. But I don't have any update in regards to that. EPB reports from other officers, composting in the village, or what was also here was the ecoscaping project in front of the village hall. I don't know if there's any update on either one of those that you're aware of.
No real movement. I need to reach out to the group who set up the gardens in the front of Village Hall, and I am not up to speed on the composting project, but it's obviously a great idea.
Sure. The land ecoscaping or landscaping in front of it, is there troubles with it or problems?
It's more a matter of timing, to be honest, but
Okay.
I will do it.
All right. Well, let us know if we can help with that. And then, Jonathan and Alex, I owe you information on the idling laws. And we're outside of state session right now, so putting together some of those regulations is a good time for that. Any other questions on EPB reports? Things that we're working on. I do think the wetlands issue is something worth learning about. I think it's a good opportunity for folks to learn more about wetlands or how governmental actions, activities work in the world of municipal government. Any old business? I think one of the former items was budget for this year.
Thank you for reminding me about that. The treasurer just returned to the office this week, and that was on my list to get an update for you too. I'll when I send the minutes, I'll be able to tell you more about that.
Okay, great, good, thank you. Okay, under new business, I put the other item that was sent out in advance, and that was the opening for the Ulster County Environmental Management Council. Ingrid would remember. Well, Ingrid remember there was a long-standing member of that. Well, the New Paltz representative to that board. They meet once a month. That gentleman retired, about a year ago. Been open ever since, and as far as I knew, it was the second time that Ulster County had reached out for volunteers to be on that council board. Nikita is someone I'm familiar with. He worked as an intern with us last year, our company, and now is full time. But he is interested in getting back to the community, much like I do and other members of the engineering community and other people, you guys included. So he is interested. He put his name up for consideration. I don't know really the procedures for the Ulster County Environmental Management Council membership, other than the Ulster County themselves vote on it and approve it, but I don't know how it moves up the ranks or gets that consideration. If you guys don't mind, we can talk about any kind of questions or things that you guys might have in regards to Nikita's willingness or aptitude to be able to do that. And then if there isn't any issues, and Autumn doesn't think it'd be inappropriate, I would want to offer a vote of confidence or a vote of support for Nikita's application.
Yeah, I know he's collaborated on some studies and stuff that we did in the past. I remember seeing his name around.
Yeah.
And I read through this stuff that you sent over. I think it looks great, and I'd be more than happy to sign on to a letter of support or anything like that if you wanted to draft one or something like that. Again, I'm not really too familiar with the way Ulster County conducts that either. But it looks great to me.
Okay. Autumn, do you think there's any issue if we took like a vote of support or something like that and had it recorded or reflected in the minutes?
I think that would be appropriate. I don't see anything in the Ulster County website indicating what the process is, but we can move it forward, sure.
All right. Then I'll go ahead and I'll offer a or a statement of support for Nikita's application to the Ulster County Environmental Management Council upon review of his cover letter and resume.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? Alexa, any questions on that? All right. All those in favor of that statement of support, say aye. All right. Motion passes. Any other items of interest for the Environmental Policy Board? Autumn, for next time, is it in person yet, or do we have feedback on how that might be conducted at the next meeting?
Right now, the date for the extension of the remote meetings law goes till August 13th. So I'm expecting probably that day we will either hear yay or nay as to whether or not we have to meet publicly. If it is required to meet publicly for voting purposes, then Village Hall Fire Department meeting rooms will potentially be available for the September meeting. Barring that, can make arrangements to meet here at Elting Memorial Library, possibly if they have room on their schedule to do it. Either way, it is still possible to meet remotely if you are not voting at this time or not making recommendations to the village board. So you have a little bit more flexibility with some of your decisions than some of the other boards might. So I'll keep you updated when I hear on the 13th, and we'll make plans for that at that point.
Okay. All right. I think we did this last time too, just talking hypotheticals. If we do need to meet in person, if I recall, it might be easier for us to meet at the library because it coordinates better with the meeting you already have at the library that night.
Yes, but potentially we're going to move these meetings over, the meetings that we're holding now at the library, over to Village Hall as well. So it's just a matter of when the timing really happens. The fire department move is, well, it just takes time for them to finish the move out. So once they're out, we'll have the space at Village Hall on the ground floor.
Okay. All right. So let me say this then out loud. I think we are more than willing to meet in a coordinated fashion with wherever the Zoning Appeals Board, right, later this evening
Yes.
meets on your schedule. So I don't see any disagreement from any of us that we'd be willing to go along with that process if and when that becomes necessary.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any other items for the EPB? All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Before I ask for a vote, I'll say thank you for everyone for attending tonight's Village of New Paltz Environmental Policy Board for Tuesday, August 9th. Our next meeting is the second Tuesday of September. Location to be determined, Zoom to be determined, but look for the announcements. Again, any questions, concerns, comments can be sent to the email address environment@villageofnewpaltz.org. With that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.